Hey, welcome back to Black Magic Craft. I was presented with a bit of a predicament, an issue that I think a lot of hobbyists will be able to relate to. It has to do with needing to make something in bulk, something that's kind of repetitive and avoiding it because that task can be really arduous. For me, it was creating some little duck boards or walkways to go in between my trench tiles. Even if I had a great looking battle mat for these to sit on, it would be a lot nicer if I had some great looking plank walkways to put in between them, to really spice things up. The great thing about them is that they can also be used as little bridges. But I needed a lot of these. While these are simple to make, they are really time consuming, so I avoided them for quite a while. Eventually I decided, hey, I need to do this. I need to make a lot of them. So I gotta figure out a way to make them efficiently. So this video, I'm gonna focus on the efficiency side of things rather than just like how to make what is a pretty obvious, simple thing that you can figure out how to make. So all of the planks would be made out of cheap coffee stir sticks. And when I'm working with these stir sticks to do wood stuff, I usually just break them. This gives them a really rough textured edge, makes them look really gnarly, and at small scale, more interesting. There's two problems with this when you're trying to be efficient. One is that you're gonna end up with a lot of random lengths of pieces. It's gonna be hard to keep them consistent. And for something like this, you do want them to be pretty consistent. It's also really slow. You can only make them as fast as you can make those breaks. I needed to figure out how I could cut a lot of these planks at the same length and do it very quickly. I knew that if I could cut a lot of them at the same time, like cut through several of these coffee stir sticks in one cut, it would really speed things up. So I stacked them really tight together into bundles and taped one end to make sure that they would stay together. And this way I had these little bundles that I could just cut through like a ton of them at the same time. And of course I could do this with a little razor saw, that would work, but it's pretty slow. A faster option would be using a cutting wheel on a Dremel tool, and that would be okay, but it's also not the fastest, and it can kind of create a lot of smoke. These cutting wheels are not meant to cut through like a big chunk of wood like that. So I use my little mini table saw. Obviously this isn't something that everyone has, but hey, I'm talking about efficiency, and that's why I have this tool, because when I need to do something like this, this little saw can't be beat. I set the fence as a stop to give me my consistent lengths, but I use the crosscut sled to actually make the cuts. Now, normally like on a full-size table saw, doing this with big wood like this would be super sketchy and dangerous, but on a little mini table saw where there's not a lot of pressure on things, it's pretty safe. But obviously you got to use some common sense and know what you're doing and, take some precautions. What I loved about this is that, I don't know, it took me a couple minutes to make all the bundles and then only a couple more minutes to cut everything to length. You can make hundreds of these in no time at all. Seeing a big pile of these pieces that are needed to make these is really inspiring. It's motivating. Knowing that I had already completed like half the task and probably the most annoying part of the task after 15 minutes on something that I had been dreading doing for weeks. Yeah, that's really liberating, and that makes me keen to keep going and get things done. Progress is the best motivator.
Do you need to make a website? Do you just want to make a website? You can create an amazing website using Squarespace. It's easy to use. You can pick a pre-designed template to start with and quickly adjust it to meet your needs. You can use the built-in AI tools to help design your website if you're not sure what to do yourself. Easily create an integrated online store. If you sell products or services online, you can get a store up and running in just a few moments. You can process orders and payments using Squarespace payments, make invoices for clients, whatever you need for your hobby or business. Blackmagic Craft uses Squarespace to sell original creations like the new Dungeon Door Guy miniature, which is available now. It only takes a moment to add a new product like this to your website so your clients can easily order one for themselves. If you want to see how effective and easy to use their website building tools are, go try them out yourself for free. Use the URL squarespace.com/blackmagiccraft and start a free trial. Once you're convinced and ready to launch, use the code BlackMagicCraft to save 10% on your first purchase of a website or domain.
The next step that would be time consuming is actually laying out all the planks on some rails. I didn't want to use the stir sticks for these bottom rails. They're very thin and not super straight, and there was a big risk that when I glued them, they would start to warp. Also, they have rounded ends, so it would mean more cutting to get them having the blunt ends that I wanted visually, and I'd have to take some time to, again, make sure that they were all cut to the same length. So instead, I used some higher quality stir sticks that are from the craft store. These are from Michael's, and I think they're from actually like the candle making section. They're thicker stirring sticks. They cost a little bit more, but they're still very cheap. What I like is that because they're thicker, they're nice and straight, and they're not gonna like bow or bend while the glue is drying, and the ends are already blunt cut. So I can just use them straight out of the packaging at the length they already are and use that as like my modular length. But I had to come up with a way to assemble them quickly. So a trick I've used a couple times before while making stuff like this is laying down some double-sided tape. This way I could place all these rails on the double-sided tape, a whole bunch of them at once, and then just quickly glue and lay the planks. And whenever you can avoid measuring, that will save you some time. Using just a quick visual guide like the grid on a cutting mat to space these so that they're all the same width apart is super efficient and very helpful. For glue, I used carpenter's glue. Now, super glue would technically dry faster, but waiting for glue to dry isn't something that I was too concerned about. It was more the actual like manual labor task that I was trying to speed up. And super glue isn't the strongest on wood to wood. Plus I was making a lot, so that would mean a lot of gluing, lots of super glued fingers, and lots of super glue vapor. So instead I just used carpenter glue. I could just run a thin line down each rail and then very quickly place all these boards. And the nice thing about carpenter's glue versus super glue is that it could be adjusted and moved. It's not like it would like instantly set. I could lay a couple and then slide them around if needed to get the spacing right, especially when I got to the end of the rows and wanted to finish them off. And again, this was so fast. Like I was just grabbing like handfuls of these planks and just bam, 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 dropping them on the rails, and I was done in no time. So within, I would say a half an hour, I had a bunch of these made. Enough for me to be happy with calling it a complete set. Seriously, I was really surprised at how quickly I actually banged this out. The glue took another like 15-20 minutes to dry, and then I could peel them all off the tape. And then it would be time to paint them. And I decided not to prime them first. A really common question is, why do you prime wood black only to try to paint it to look like wood? Usually it's because wood isn't the only material on a build. It's usually a mixed medium. So it just doesn't make sense to not prime the wood, but prime the other stuff that needs it. And also I often like that the primer gives things a darker tone, and then you can use like a zenithal highlight to give things a quick shaded effect. But for these, I was going for efficiency, and they were all entirely made of wood. So I just used some raw umber ink, threw an airbrush, and blasted them. That's it. And this was also really fast. I mean, the only thing that really took time was just like physically handling them all and finding places in the spray booth to like place them and let them dry up. But I don't think there's a faster way than this to paint these. It did leave them looking a little bit too clean and uniform. So I decided to mix up some brown and red oil wash and splatter it on by saturating a brush and then blowing air through that brush with the airbrush. And this would just give a bunch of like random splatter that would soak into the wood and stain it. You know, making things look more splotchy, making it look like there was some mud, some dirty water that had stained these planks, some blood. This is a really fast way to add a bit of visual variety to a very consistent and cohesive paint job. And mixing an oil wash is really fast. It only takes like a second, and then yeah, just let it soak up and dry, and they're ready to go. And in the end, hell, I'm very pleased with how these turned out. They're for Trench Crusade, but one of the reasons I kept them a little bit more clean and didn't actually add a bunch of mud to them is because they can also work great in other settings, like if I'm playing D&D in a mine shaft or some docks at a seaport. You know, wood planks that span terrain is super useful. But more importantly, I'm happy with how quickly I made these. Honestly, I had been avoiding them for far too long, not because they would be hard to make, they're easy to make, but because they would be tedious and honestly not that interesting. Wood planks is not that interesting, but I do think the challenge and the exercise of trying to take a task and make it as efficient as possible is interesting, and it's something that I enjoy doing. So I hope you found this somewhat informational and inspiring. Whatever repetitive task you might have to do for your hobby, I hope this makes you think about it a little bit differently and a little bit more efficiently. If you liked the video, drop a comment, hit like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Of course, if you want to support the channel, you can do that either by supporting the channel on Patreon, which is very, very helpful, or by picking up some of my merch at 𝙏𝙝𝙞𝙨.ca. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you again next time. Cheers.